The area he was located in is a very steep, rugged area, very hard to get to, and had been overlooked by searchers over the course of the last week.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. This is day 27 since Summer Wells disappeared on June 15th. In this episode we're going to talk about a different search strategy, perhaps a more effective search strategy, and we're going to look at a successful search, or certainly a case that concluded fairly recently based on another missing person search in the area. In fact, it was actually reported on by WJHL, and the audio I played for you at the beginning was from WJHL. So we're going to go into that particular case, the Tom Hastings disappearance, and Tom Hastings has been found, and we're going to look at how that happened and perhaps how that provides perhaps insight or guidance in the search for Summer Wells, because it's basically the same terrain, it's the same area. Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Like, share, leave a comment, and let's get started. So I'm going to play a clip for you from WJHL. It was posted something like 2 days ago, I think July 10th. And about just a week after Tom Hastings disappeared. And I want you to pay attention to what he said there, because that is a vital insight, I think, into how one needs to look for Summer Wells. Let's listen in.
Around 9:45 Saturday morning, when Thomas Hastings was found dead near his home.
The area he was located in is a very steep, rugged area, very hard to get to, and had been overlooked by searchers over the course of the last week.
The Carter County Rescue Squad, EMS, the Sheriff's Department, and a separate group of volunteers searched on Saturday.
Because this was in a inhabited area, a lot of houses, a lot of people in the woods already, made it more difficult because we didn't have that distinct point last seen that we could begin tracking the subject from. We basically did a grid search through the area, and that's how we ended up locating him.
The 65-year-old was last seen on July 1st and suffered from dementia.
So just a little bit of backstory on Thomas Hastings. He was a 65-year-old man. He actually went missing on July 1st, so more than 2 weeks after Summer's disappearance. And he was found, well, he was actually only reported missing 2 days later on July 3rd. And then they actually found him, I think, around about July 9th or 10th on the Saturday. And the Hastings family organized two of its own searches on Tuesday and on Saturday, and it was on the Saturday that they actually located him. I was actually under the impression that it was a family member who discovered him, but I see from the media report here that he was recovered from Roan Mountain, but I think he was discovered by the Carter County Rescue Squad. Now, in this particular case, they don't suspect foul play, and they think that what happened to Hastings was accidental, that he fell. And I'll put a link up to the Johnson City Press article as well as the WJHL article. Now, in terms of the WJHL article, they referred to the Carter County Rescue Squad, saying that they found him in an area where they determined by looking at maps as a high probability area. So they went back to that area, and then they did a more thorough search of the area. So they'd already searched the area, and they just searched more thoroughly, and then that is how they found him. In this particular case, it's sort of not there's nothing really strange about it. It was a fact that Hastings would often wander off. So the fact that he was missing and he was only reported 2 days later isn't particularly of concern, because he had dementia and he would habitually wander off. Obviously, that doesn't apply to Summer, who was both smaller and younger and also wouldn't have wandered off. Certainly not for weeks at a time, and now approximately a month. So how should the search for Summer be improved? Now, I'm sure that they are searching for Summer in a similar way to the way they've been searching for this Hastings guy. And if they're not using the same search squad that found Hastings, maybe they should. Maybe they could use that squad as well. But I think what is important to bear in mind here is that they refer to a grid search, right? And with a grid search, you basically identify an area, you go through it kind of with a fine-tooth comb, then you cross that grid off and you sort of say, okay, we've dealt with that, we're not going to go there again. And you sort of cross that area off your list, right? Now, what I would suggest happens with a Summer Wells search, regardless of what they've already done, is that they return to Ben Hill Road as the sort of epicenter, and they sort of take it. I don't think that Summer left home, but it's possible that someone carried her from wherever something happened to her and then left her somewhere, right? If she hasn't been driven out of the area, it's possible she's still in the area just as Hastings was. And the most likely place when someone disappears for them to be is fairly close to their the point of origin or the part they were last seen. That is kind of something that is quite common in these cases, is that the person isn't that far. And so in this case, the Hastings case, you have that happening once again. And I think that needs to be absolutely excluded in the Summer Wells case. But in order to do that, I think they need to go back, just as law enforcement did with the Hastings case, and make absolutely sure that Summer's not in a sort of 1 to 2 mile radius. And so there are two basic strategies for searching. The one is known as a spiral search, and it's often used inside buildings, sometimes even inside a room, inside a crime scene, with a spiral going inwards, right? You can also do a spiral going outwards. Now, my suggestion is that you do something that is a combination of a radial search, so you radiating outwards, almost like the spokes of a wheel. So you get as many volunteers as you can find, and then they form like a cluster around the home, almost like taking hands, and then they start to radiate outwards, right? And you can determine how far that is, maybe 1 mile, maybe 2 miles, maybe half a mile. And then once they've reached a point, they then cycle slightly in a clockwise direction, and then they come back the same way, but obviously on a slightly different route. Now, at the same time that you have this radial search pattern, you can also have a spiral search going on. In other words, you can have people crossing paths with one another, right? And also during this period, identify areas within these search grids where more attention is going to be needed. Things like garbage dumps, things like piles of whatever, things like ponds, things like ditches or kind of ridges or just treacherous terrain, right? And so those areas you're not going to just sort of walk by. You're actually going to want to spend some time going through it, right? Another, I think, important strategy is to look at areas of disturbed earth. Now, speaking of disturbing, on the 11th of July, an article appeared in the Johnson City Press. I think the channel Plunder has already covered some of what Sheriff Lawson said in that particular article. What he was quoted, he was saying, this case is not even close to being cold. I find that pretty troubling that, on day 27, there's already talk about, is this case going to become a cold case? Less than a month later, questions are being asked, is this going to be a cold case? We know that Summer's family told police she was last seen near her home at Ben Hill Road. It's a very rural community on June 15th at about 6:30 p.m. That's quite late to when I think she probably disappeared. According to Lawson, they're still following leads, still looking for that Toyota, thinking that, maybe this driver saw something, but I wonder whether they're not actually looking for the driver himself. There's quite a lot of rumor circulating around that particular thing. Now, although I'm personally confident this case will be solved, apparently there are 6 active missing person or mysterious death cases cycling through the local Kingsport Police Department right now. 6. One involves the unsolved disappearance of 33-year-old David Wayne Blizzard as far back as 2005. I mean, that predates the Rosemary Bly disappearance by 4 years, right? Another is the disappearance of 33-year-old Nadine Rogers in 2002 from Kingsport. That's an even colder case. There are 2 additional unsolved cases from slightly further afield. Larry Trent, missing since 1997, and Brent Patton, missing since 1986. So you can have cases like this that just go unsolved, unresolved. Is that going to happen here? Is that going to be the fate of the Summer Wells case? I think it's doubtful whether any of those cases garnered the sort of attention this one has, or the massive kind of media attention that this case is getting. And I think where cases as high profile as this one, it tends to be the kryptonite that tends to expose things like cover-ups and foul deeds that have been secreted away. I also think it's relevant, the kind of work that Don does, that he's a construction worker, or that he would work on construction sites, and the kind of things that he does on those construction sites. I think that is relevant to how one needs to think about going about a search in this case. All right, I'm not going to take things further than that. In the next episode, we're going to look into who is David Dodson. What do we know from this particular character that is a little bit part of the fabric of the Summer Wells case? Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.